Are you in your warehouse right now?
Yes. So you are in your studio in Bangkok, and I'm in the little warehouse in downtown LA.
Looks great.
Yeah, there's a lot of plants here.
Yeah,
Can,
looks
can
like
you show the
almost.
camera a little bit your studio? Is that possible, or are you on a big computer that you can't
I'm
move?
on a big computer. I mean, it's a makeshift studio. It's like a guest house. Oops,
Yeah,
that I'm staying in. That's my
yeah.
closet. I'm working on a painting, bunch
Oh,
of
great.
painting. This is what I call my studio.
That looks amazing.
It's good for now. This is where I sleep. This is where I edit my video. This is where I binge watch movies. Yeah, this is my life for now. There's a beautiful backyard um outside, but it's 1 a.m. right now, so unfortunately
Yeah.
you can't see anything.
As
But
this is a pilot studio visit, I wonder, Asa, if we could put it on a view that you are recording always the screen where something is happening. So it would be either Korakrit's studio view or me briefly talking or the slideshow. Is that possible?
Yes, I believe so. I'll work on that.
That would be great because that was so nice to see the studio. So are you under lockdown in Bangkok, Crit?
yeah, yeah, essentially it's the same as America. I think it's in Bangkok it's a bit less strict. It's around like 2,200 people have it in the country now, but it's pretty much yeah, you're not supposed to go outside and everything is closed except the grocery store.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
it's a lockdown. It's a
When,
lockdown
when
everywhere in the world.
everywhere in the world, when you go out, do you wear a mask and protective gear or?
I mean, I haven't gone out. I arrived here from New York a little over 2 weeks ago, and I have just been inside, and I've been I order my groceries. I see my parents, and they live next door, and I've been helping them out. And yeah, they're old. They're 71, so I'm a little bit scared of exposing them. So I'm trying to be as cautious as I can. So yeah, I'm trying to not go out
So
at all.
Thailand and Bangkok are under the same lockdown like every other country in the world, but you say it's not yet that, it's not so many cases yet, right?
Yeah, comparatively, I compared to it doesn't seem as extreme as it doesn't seem as extreme as America and Europe yet. Although we'll see.
Yeah. You
It's
as an,
there's so many factors.
you as
Um,
an artist in this moment, do you think you can still work, or do you have most time basically adjusting and comprehending and digesting the situation? Can you work on your art?
I mean, to be honest, it does feel like me, like everyone else. It's a pretty hard time, like mentally and intellectually. I feel really lucky to have a place to like stay, a shelter, and food to eat, and I'm painting every day. But for me right now, at least, the painting work feels a little bit like almost like a sidetrack to life. But I am finding, I'm reading and listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot of news. And a few days ago, I think I realized I had to kind of just break the days down so that I'm not just following the news all day long. Because yeah, it is hard to try to take everything in. For me personally, I think I always think about whenever I make work, I always think about what is the best thing I can offer to like the world that receives the work, you know. And right now I am finding a hard time, you know, to imagine that future world, near future, or
that's exactly why
you know.
I wanted to do the studio visits. I wanted to do the studio visits because first of all, we still need beauty and distraction in our life, and distracting is doing something together, and beauty is art and truth. And I also felt that it would be good to do the studio visits because as a museum, as MOCA, I want to stay in contact with the artist. I want to also make what is normally only done in small group studio visits accessible for a larger audience. But I also thought that artists are actually in their regular practice, not only in crisis, they're more in charge of their own schedule. I hope that's still true.
Yeah.
But you are more in charge of structuring your day and scheduling your weeks. And I always admire this because I'm an office worker. I have to go to the office every morning. And I always admire the artist saying like, oh, we do this weekend and then we are off for 3 days. And then we have this incredible production and we don't sleep for like 2 weeks or so. So for an artist, it's more common to be in charge of your own schedule on a day-to-day basis. So how does your day-to-day look?
Well, you know, a lot of my day-to-day, I'd say it's changed a lot since my 2 weeks quarantine ended. I live now in a smaller sort of like house, room next to you know, like a bigger house where my parents and the rest of my family in Thailand lives. And now I can visit them and socialize with them, and it's changed a lot. But it's also like, I don't know, the other day I spent around like an hour trying to like buy groceries, and then when the groceries arrive like in the delivery, I had to, you know, put gloves on and pick them up, and then I like clean all of it, you know. That took a while. So I feel like I'm trying to be really cautious, and like there's a garden. I've been like we have a mango tree. I've been like trying to do some gardening work, trying to move this mango tree from this area to another area. So I've been doing things like that, trying to like exercise, trying to stay healthy. Yeah, I would say like, I don't know. I mean, it's weird. In New York, you know, or in my normal, in my life prior to quarantine, I never really had a schedule because it was always structured around work because I was traveling so much. So actually now it feels like there is, because every day is so predictable, there is some kind of structure now. You know, I wake up, I have to get myself to wake up, I meditate, I follow the news, I'm trying to get certain amount of work done, or at least I check in with my friends in New York and LA, and that's usually happens in the morning or late at night. And I have sort of like the middle chunk of the day to basically paint or garden. And yeah.
That's beautiful. So to make it a studio visit, I prepared some slide as a surprise to you because you had videos you wanted to share. We can share that later, but I thought we should go. Could we see the slides, please? Can we start with the first slide?
Am I allowed to ask you questions too? I'm pretty curious as well.
All the time.
So like, yeah, how has this whole thing changed your schedule?
So I'm not going to the office. I'm staying at home, and staying at home is a lot of Zoom calls. So I think most of the museum meetings, all of the museum meetings are either phone or Zoom. So we have an all-staff meeting, we have the certain department meetings, we have meetings with foundations from the outside, all happen on Zoom, like the studio visit now. And it means basically, I'm trying to establish a calendar, like a schedule for every day, like you do. You say you wake up, you check the news, you work out, then you start with the backlog of emails and text messages, and then to establish a daily calendar where you also, I have basically between 5 and 7 in the evenings, because Los Angeles with the time change, that's still a time to call people in the US. And then the mornings or late at night is a good time to call people in Europe or all over the world. So I'm trying to establish a schedule that is at the moment a constant update, because when you are alone in a room, you look at your phone too often and you look at your screen too often. So actually having a studio visit like this is actually a great different sphere you're in, because I'm not looking at the phone, I'm not looking at the screen. We are now doing what a curator and museum director and an artist do. We talk about art. So downtown LA is, people are following the rules, social distancing, nobody's out. And strangely enough, it's raining since 3 days. So it feels a bit cold. But let's be grateful that we are here.
Yeah,
that we are alive, and there's hope. So I think that's a reason to be grateful for. Shall we start with looking at slides, Korakrit?
Yeah, let's look at slides.
Great.
Yeah.
We can do the first art slide, perhaps. We go to the, yeah, perfect. That was in Sculpture Center. And I'm trying to move the slides. Great.
2013, 7 years ago.
Yeah. Hans Ulrich and I visited Sculpture Center, and then we met you. And was this your first institutional show, Korakrit?
Yeah, I think this is the year prior to this. I was in a graduate school at Columbia University, you know, and I think this is my first show out of school.
Yeah, can we go to the next slide, perhaps?
It's a show. It's a it's an open call show called In Practice at Sculpture Center. Yeah.
Asa, could I use the slides? Could I do that actually? Yeah. Perfect. I'll try. Hold on. This is our first Zoom studio visits. Learning by doing.
That's good. I'm new to it too.
Hold on. Yeah. Click to start remote control of the shared.
It's like, remember when you learn?
I remember Hans Ulrich and I think it works. Okay. I remember Hans Ulrich and I going through the basement of Sculpture Center, and there was this kind of like video light and like colored light. It was like a pool, and you had all these like fragments of burned canvases and painted over clothing and pattern. And so that was the first time I had heard what you were doing through Rikrit Tirvanesia. Did you study with Rikrit?
Yeah, he was one of my professors, and I actually used to intern. I was his intern.
And then I put this clip in here. This kid makes bad art. I remember that clip. Do you want to say a little bit about that video clip?
Yeah. So I'd say for the first few years of actually my practice, this moment was, I guess, a pretty crucial moment. Prior to this, I was I grew up in Thailand, but I would say most of my education and framing towards what art is was kind of made in America through essentially like American art institutions. And one of the projects that I kind of embarked on right after I graduated from school was to sort of create almost a representation of myself as a denim painter.
Yeah.
And to kind of use, you know, denim as almost like to almost trace like the roots of you know, denim as this like globalized fabric that kind of like moves through the world through like labor and like globalization. And I wanted to create like I essentially I created like a sort of character that would weave back sort of from Western painting to kind of like back to like learning about like my home country, which was Thailand, but through essentially like the connecting point being contemporary art and probably like contemporary painting. And this clip was something on national news in Thailand.
Was
where
that fake or was it really on national news?
It was on national news. It was basically like on a TV show called Thailand's Got Talent, which is like America's Got Talent.
Yeah.
This woman, her name's Dongjan Jam Sao Noi. She's essentially her profession is she's a go-go dancer, and then she got paid by the producer of the show to go on the show and do this body painting performance that basically reads as go-go dancing with paint. It's like kind of like a go-go dancing version of someone essentially probably some TV producer processing like Yves Klein and the cliche of, you know, the artist covered in paint. And because Thailand is fundamentally a Buddhist country, you know, and then this became really you know, this became a really sort of like problematic thing, you know. And then
finally, 7 years later, I realized it was really on TV. I always
really
cut and paste it. Can we go to the next video? Can we go to the next slide? Oh, great. I can do this. I just didn't find the... What is this, Korakrit?
Okay, well, I wanted to, okay, so it's just, I wanted to just finish about the last slide a little bit. The man on the left, he's actually like the #1 national artist in Thailand who would build this really famous tourist site called the White Temple. And he's, you know, I say for Thai people, non-art, like he's the most famous artist. And I wanted...
What is his name?
Chalerm Chai Kosit Pipat. The project you wanted, the project we did together at the MoMA window, the modern window, is actually an appropriation of his work that I did. But the thing I wanted to say about this was the reason he has so much agency as this male painter is because he's fundamentally Buddhist. He built a temple. And for me, I wanted to draw like these two kind of like parts, perhaps the idea of like Buddhism or like goodness as a consciousness to a people, and then something else like on the other side, this female performing go-go dancing. I mean, Thailand's basically known for the temples and known for like, you know, like the sex entertainment industry, you know. And I was thinking about that that side as the suppressed unconscious. And for me, this moment was important because I essentially wanted to map out the conscious and unconscious of this kind of essentially both representing the national identity, and then the artist going back to that national identity, you know.
Yeah, we used his temple, this artist's temple, in what we did at the Museum of Modern Art. I had to look when that was. That was in 2014.
Yep.
And we did the modern window, which was like a little bit between a flower shop and a temple and a face and architecture going modern, going Bangkok, going ornamentation in a way. Do you want to say a little bit about this project?
Yeah, essentially, if you step back, the repetition of the two, if you step back, it essentially looks like an eye looking at you, and in the pupil of the eye, you you see these footage that I've taken of this temple, built by this aforementioned artist. And the thing about it is I guess I was really trying to think of, it's at the facade of essentially the same building as the Museum of Modern Art, and I was really trying to think about, you know, essentially this artwork that is the most probably like significant artwork like as a building in Thai modern art, but like would never somehow would never be inside or would never make any contact with a Western institution like the MoMA for, for its kind of like folkiness, is kind of, like for a number of, obvious reasons.
Perhaps
And
for everybody, Korakrit, for everybody who doesn't know exactly where this is, so there is the Lauder entrance on 53rd Street going into MoMA, which is the one of the main entrances. You also go into the movie theaters, you go to the galleries. It's where this beautiful canopy is. And so this is basically those two windows for years at Artist Projects. And they are the first thing when you come from Fifth Avenue or from the E train. They're basically the first thing you see when you enter the museum. And it's normally a very cool architecture, modern atmosphere on the street. And you brought in this very ornate flower store aesthetic. And perhaps we jump a little further in the slides. I have this detail here, so you can see that you have the pupil of the eye, you have a circular shape, you have ornamentation around it. And I remember first the project was nearly all white, and then you started inserting these flower arrangements, which made it more like looking like a storefront, which was really beautiful to break this very monochromatic facade. And then I want to, at the same time, I want to go and show these slides, because while we had at MoMA as a window on the facade, we had at MoMA Piers 1 this show, which I think perhaps you can talk a little bit about this kind of, also the eyes again. Here the eyes are two TV screens. We had these cushions where you could, like a landscape where you could be in, and then the cushions were there, but there were also paintings in the room that were basically as if they had been on fire. You had set them on fire, and you had photographed the fire and inserted the photographic fire, but you also had set some of the canvases on fire, literally on fire. So you see,
yeah, they're all set on fire. Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about this body of work, those paintings with the jeans?
Yeah. Well, do you want to go back to? I can talk about do you want to go back to the painting before the slide prior?
Yes.
Thank you. So this painting in particular, oh wait, to go back a little bit, the character of the denim painter that I had that I sort of I guess like made through the narratives in the video and through like different like tools of representation. Essentially, I think the video installation in the same room kind of function as almost like the beginning of like, like the genesis of like this character. And then each episode of the video as as new topics and subjects and places and characters were kind of added and touched upon. Like the paintings would kind of grow, the paintings that's really started off as just like bleached denim would kind of just accumulate layers and sort of make connections back with each other in a way. So the painting that we were looking at just now, you know, essentially had a body painting that was done in the exact same way as the artist on the reality TV show with the body painting. And then with the fire, I guess for me, the most important thing is I was really thinking about the paintings. The series of paintings are called history paintings, and videos are often called painting with history in a room filled with people with funny names. And I guess the funny names part comes from maybe in the beginning, it was almost like this kind of the almost like the exorcist, my name being exorcised, sorry, like essentially for being Thai, you know, so like my name being kind of like ridicule or standing out, especially in the context of the year 2012 to 14, when, you know, like I in New York, many painters who I feel like I was showing with were like white men. And I think the series talks about perhaps like the idea of becoming this painter and taking this persona on. Like you eventually become like a man with a funny name, like Andy Warhol becoming a funny name to someone, you know, even Julian Schnabel, or all these names essentially becoming like funny from another viewpoint, you know, from outside like the room, from outside the place you're in, you know.
Yeah,
and
it's double-sided because you have Fontana, Pistoletto, Yves Klein, you have all these different homages and quotes and points of departure that are in your painting. Then you have here in the middle of the screen, you have the Thai temple, and of course a funny name. I remember when I first introduced you at a larger group, and so the funny name is always the name where it's not common, and then it becomes a common name. But I remember in this installation, you also had these videos.
yeah,
you see the turtle, you see in front of a painting. And is this your grandfather? Because
my grandfather, yes. Yeah, this is my grandfather.
And I want to go from this historical pieces. I just give a quick overview. We did this gigantic performance in the Performance Dome at MoMA PS1 with Boy Child, 1,000 visitors. And then we brought this to Miami at Basel. So this is still here in the Dome.
Miami happened before, actually, and then this happened
It
after.
happened before. You see, I don't have my chronology right. But
Yeah.
I remember that this was such a huge event where the painting, the action painting, and the burning and the performative aspects all were coming together. Here you see Boy Child performing. But I want to come because these studio visits, virtual studio visits, are booked exactly at the hour. So we have to...
Okay, yeah, we have to go. Sorry.
Close at 12.
Yeah, I'll be more concise. It's just, we're going through so, like, 10 years worth of work right now.
Live, Krit. And perhaps we should say that was very funny because talking about artists with funny names, we went to Miami and we did that little Instagram road movie story. Remember that?
Yep, I remember that.
Because in 2013, Instagram was relatively new and not so many people were on, and people didn't know you then. And I remember that we chronicled the traveling to Miami and scenes in Miami and preparing the performance. And it was interesting because Instagram wasn't, at the time, there were no sponsored ads, and it was more like lots of artists being on there.
No one was saying the word influencer yet.
Yeah, there was no way. And everybody said to me, who is that person on your Instagram feed? And then it was very funny because they said, who is that person with a funny name? And I think then after Miami Art Basel with this huge performance, people knew that what you were up to. What were you up to at the time? If you had to explain what you were doing as intention or form, for me, art is always finding form. And I felt at this moment, saw Sculpture Center, we saw the Museum of Modern Arts, the small project, we saw MoMA PS1, the bigger project. I felt at this moment you found form. What is your form and what is your format?
I mean, I think okay, so especially after going through all the slides, it's pretty clear. I feel like all my projects are actually windows into each other, and perhaps like even like the ways the paintings connect to like the narrative or the character making the painting, connecting to myself and like real experiences and like that I go through in the world. And when you were talking about the Instagram video we did together, and the performance in Miami and how documentation and parts of that even bleed into the show and then into this performance again at MoMA PS1. And I think at this show for this performance, I would say I found like my main form perhaps being like an accumulation of experience in time, but that also involves like pretty much like it's not just the life lived that's documented, but it's also like a kind of shared memory that then gets activated within like essentially a performance as a ritual. You know, and for me, I think this after building like, I guess when this performance happened, it was around like 3 years of like content within one project, right? These sort of connections from like my grandfather to this to myself, my life in grad school, then to Korakrit, to you, to different exhibitions that I've done prior to this, accumulating even to the show at MoMA PS1, the window at the modern window, and and Miami, like, and even like my presence on your Instagram. All these things build and accumulate on top of each other and inform prior, like certain audiences many of the audiences were actually like people who had been in my video who were Thai, and or people I've worked with, and along with Boysha, who at this point I've worked with for 3 or 4 projects before we did this MoMA PS1 performance. And I think that felt really important.
May I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah. No.
I felt from the very beginning, I often look at artists' work, and sometimes I think of an artist's work as a self-portrait. I actually like artists' self-portraits, and I like portraits of the studio. And when I started working with you, I felt your work was very cinematic and autobiographical. So you're referring to your grandfather, your family, your allied artist you work with, because you work with them for several projects. So I felt it is cinematic and autobiographic, but also self-portrait. So our Instagram project, we didn't think about it as art, but it imitated the way how you insert road movies and narratives and the garden of your family and your grandfather and the turtle. So it was a little bit along the same format in a way. And I would like to go now, because we have still 10 more minutes, I would like to go fast through your project here. You did the Berlin Biennial. That was a floating club. And it was a beautiful, strange object in the middle of the city on a river that was working as this crazy gathering place. And as you said, there are lots of memories from that. You see here the inside of this boat, and you took one of these touring boats and completely transformed it. But I want to go a little further here. Is this your grandfather?
This is my grandfather, yes.
Want to go a little further? Your Venice, that was in the Biennale in Venice. No history in a room filled with people with funny names, number 5, Venice Biennale last year. And there was this beautiful installation here with 3 screens, and you see people sitting in front. And I want to go further to the Dhaka Art Summit here.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps we close in this, we close here, and you talk a little bit about what your Venice project was about, what you, because talk a bit perhaps about the cave and the surviving in the cave and how this became a cinematic story, like a modern day fairy tale, nearly like a modern legend. That would be really interesting to learn about more.
So
this slide back so it's easier for you to describe the different aspects of the narrative.
Okay, so we now just fast forward from around 6 years from the last project, but essentially somehow my I guess my content and my content and materials grew from a very personal place out to, I guess, meet like wider topics. And essentially there was one topic that I was really interested in that happened, which was, you know, like Thailand has a king, and he passed away in 2000 end of 2016. And after his death 2000 end of 2016, and his death kind of happened along the same time, essentially, as the rise of Donald Trump. And then that year felt that 2 years felt like a really kind of like paradigm shifting kind of moment. And I kind of just wanted to look deeper into essentially like the construction between like not the construction, like I guess the connection between these two moments. And then I got to a point deeper, which was going back, like the relationship between like the moment the identity of the king was constructed in relationship to sort of like this kind of Vietnam War, Cold War politics that had to do with like CIA intervention and perhaps like a collaboration, you know. And this is all stuff that like is not in history books, you know. You can kind of like sort of like look into it only through sort of like maybe like unwritten history perhaps. And so I was looking a lot into these kind of like more like the spiritual and sort of like the like kind of like mythical, like under narrative, like animism essentially, that kind of like came out of sort of like that moment, that crucial moment in, I guess, like his history of Thailand. And then and I encountered this phenomenon called the ghost cinema, which is essentially something like monks showing movies in temples and inviting ghost spirits, specific spirits, to come and watch the movie. And then they would then invite people to come and watch the movie with spirits. And this, in a way, enact like a ritual. But it was, and then you trace this ritual back. It actually came, you know, these kind of like film projectors came from a longer, bigger story that involved essentially like the American military and their relationship to ghosts, and kind of like sort of like when they were taking over the land, essentially. Yeah, and then meanwhile, while I was researching through all of this, these 13 kids who are in a soccer team in Thailand got stuck in a cave. And then, you know, now it's this moment where like we have a new king, we have a military government, a lot of things are changing again. And the kids are somewhat, in short, like a lot of people just really got interested in saving the kids, you know, starting from Elon Musk, sort of like different spiritual leaders in Thailand, the Christian church.
Question to virtual MOCA: how could we make it that we see Korakrit? Because we went through the slides. How can we make it that we all see Korakrit bigger? Great. Perfect.
You see me bigger? I just see you. Oh, okay.
That's better even. Great.
Yeah.
So basically, how you explained it to me, the country is in upheaval or in reorganization. So 13 kids get stuck and
In the cave. They're used as kind of like storytelling tools, essentially, almost like a little bit of like a propaganda building instrument to kind of retell the story of the state, essentially, as a caretaker, right? Meanwhile, like the religions, the different kind of companies, like the capitalists, like the American military, like everyone's joining in to try and like not only save the kids, but sort of to reaffirm this narrative of like the caretaker help, you know, that you need someone to take care of you. And then I was really interested in essentially like the connection with like first the cinema as a site of possession to tell a story, or rather for a story to possess a group of audience. And then I was then interested in like this story which essentially told by like states and, you know, different kind of like usually like powerful points of you know, powerful contemporary storytellers, you know, being something of this dynamic of the fact that they are the caregiver giving the care and that you do need them, you know. And then so yeah, so essentially video and the performance investigate like, you know, like essentially the nature of storytelling and whether that narrative of the caretaker and the care receiver could be undone.
did that help the country galvanize in a new form?
What?
Did that help the country galvanize around this, strengthen around this narrative?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, this happened now 2 years ago, but it was an important moment, you know. I would say for, you know, for like it was a big moment, you know, and it was an interesting moment where you see a lot of sort of these different sides, these different groups of people that form completely separate almost realities kind of come together to claim like a story, like, you know,
yeah,
to sort of build this like story. And for me that feels pretty much the closest thing in the contemporary time, like what probably happened back then 70 years ago during, you know, like kind of like post Cold War Thailand, like America coming in, like sort of like introducing like spreading neoliberalism and like all the activities by the CIA and sort of, you know, writing a story with like the different kind of like aspects of like you know, like human life, you know, the spiritual, you know, like the state, essentially how people relate to each other, like you know, like the narrative of the caretaker.
We are now in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of interesting because the internet is not structurally, it's spatially, but it's structured temporarily or temporally. So I think that's kind of an interesting moment. So if you want to use the last 4 minutes to say a little bit your outlook, both on the situation right now and your future projects, that would be nice. And I really thank you for being so. I know, how late is it in Bangkok now?
It's like 2 a.m.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm out of it. Yeah.
Bedtime. Say a little bit about what you're working on right now and what your outlook or your wishes for the upcoming weeks.
Well, right now, I'm every day I'm just painting. I've been sort of like doing a study of the Hieronymus Bosch, The Garden of Earthly Delight. And
is that what is behind you?
That's what's behind me.
Wow.
This is the center panel.
Can you go a little closer with your camera? Oh, that's amazing.
Like it's on denim, you know.
It's on denim.
Yeah, it's on denim, yeah.
Version.
But you know, it feels like at least as an allegorical painting, it feels almost relevant to our lives right now in ways that I maybe can't, like, don't have time to go into, but just, you know, this garden with like these kind of like perverse scene of people and animals and plants and abstract form and these little places that we all go and, you know, create these activities together. You know, it makes me, you know, it's like, I think me painting it and like, I guess doing a study and sort of like looking at the painting a lot every day is I wouldn't call it escape, but it's a good place to go to, I guess, for me, slightly reflect on what is happening right now in a, you know, in a way that's not so, what's it called? You know, the other way is the other way I've been kind of processing all of this is I'm just kind of, you know, talking.
It's not one-dimensional. It's definitely, it has an historical and it has an imaginative, and of course it has the abyss in it.
And it has time that's out of this contemporary, as opposed to like my more normal life, which is reading the news and trying to figure out what's going to happen and where we all going and what are the things that we're, you know, gaining, what are the things that we're going to lose, and how to live essentially. And I don't know that, and I think that's the thing, like no one knows right now, and all we can do is try to be flexible, right? And
kind. And a huge thank you, Korakrit. This was amazing, and we're sending all our best to you and your family. So nice, at least you're close to your family.
I just want to say one last thing, where if anyone like to see the videos, actually the video that was at the Installation and Sculpture Center, I think next week will be on a Clearing Gallery website, and the video, another video that's actually it's with History in a Room Filled with People with Funny Names 4 will is on Carlos Ishikawa's website for another week. And
I forward these pieces of information. I will add it to the text.
Okay, I'm just saying, if people actually want to see the work, it's up online actually right now.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you
for staying up until 2
a.m. Thank you. Greetings from Los Angeles.
I don't know how to hang up.